There we go. So we're going to talk about the implementation plan of extracting a piece that is currently stored in Redis cache into a new Redis instance. The piece we've chosen for that is everything that is currently read from Gitly. So that's files, branch names, tag names, references, all of that stuff. Yeah, and we'll move that out into a new instance. In the Google Doc, I've um, outlined the plan and I've populated all issues in the Epic. I do think that when we start working through this, then more things will pop up, or we're going to split some things out into more issues. But yeah, I thought that was a good first start. The things that I know more about are more fleshed out. So, for example, and that's probably more for the both of you. Like you probably know more about this, but everything to spin up a new cluster, I have no idea how that works. I've seen a little bit of it in demos and so on, like where Igor was using Tanka to deploy them, but I have no idea.
Is this going to be the first cluster that goes in Kubernetes?
Yeah, that's
Or
yes, no, but
In fact, there's one other cluster that we're working on. Actually, the initial intent was to do rate limiting, and I think the goal has shifted there to a cache for registry because they needed it sooner.
Okay.
But yeah, this is greenfield work. Yeah.
Okay, so the plan is to put this new work in Kubernetes, not to spin it up in the environment that we have today, or the setup that we have today with the Sentinels and
Sentinels.
VMs.
We still have Sentinels in
I understand.
but not on VMs.
It doesn't have to be, but it's since that's the direction we're going, we figured we'd give it a shot. Is that still where we're at, Bob?
That's kind of the idea. Like, and it's also my understanding. The intention of the work is that that it's much easier for everybody to spin up a cluster. So as far as we get doing this stuff, like we're going to have to involve the people that know this better because it's, as you mentioned, greenfield. Like not everything is as configurable as we need it to be yet, and like all of that. But I think it's yeah, a good start. So if possible, I would deploy, like I would spin it up in Kubernetes.
My only question about that was, I mean, obviously, given the choices, doing this in Kubernetes and not having to transition it in the future would be better. The question was just timing. Like, can we wait however long we have to wait to have a functional environment? And it sounded like from Igor's demo last week that it was maybe a month, maybe 2 months.
Yeah, we really don't know. So let's take a moment to talk about the TTL piece, or I guess the reducing the memory footprint, since we talked about that as TTL initially, and looking over the issues, Bob, that you've made. It looks like 2 of the 3 of them were suggesting switching to ETAG.
Yes.
For client-side caching. That was a really good idea, and it hadn't even occurred to me.
No, it's just like looking at the implementation. These things are taking up storage, and they're not shared across users.
Users, yeah.
So and they are for our like front end, not the cache. So that could be not the API or anything fancy like that. So that seemed like a good thing to set in front. Like there's the 4 pieces that we're talking about represent about 12 to 15% of storage used in the sample that I took. So everything together, we should super optimistically gain about 40% ish. But one of the issues I've created was harder. Like that was the highlight cache. It's like a proper cache. It's shared, but it's code that's stored in Redis, so it's just big. And there I've mentioned reducing TTL, like do it for a few hours. I mentioned 8 hours, I think. from down from I think a week. So those things should be easier. The teams are working on that, and I hope that that will roll out faster than this.
And that should give us enough time to do this correctly, which is a good way to be. Okay.
That's the hope.
Right.
The problem with the short amount of time, like I took a snapshot at a certain time. It took about 2-ish hours to get that snapshot. So we only have data from that. So it's not really an excellent measure to see if that would be enough to reduce the growth of reduce the memory growth enough to stay below max memory for long enough.
Yeah, that's one of the topics I kind of wanted to casually talk about. I have a couple of really rough ideas for how we could try to estimate how much memory we need to shed to get underneath the max mem limit. I need to put some more thought into whether or not these are actually feasible things to measure. I mean, once we reduce the memory footprint, it'll be obvious.
One of the things that I brought up in this epic is adding metrics of bytes written, bytes read for this specific piece of the cache, for this specific piece of data.
Yes.
Because that should give us an estimate, like if it comes in at this many megabytes an hour, and we want to keep it for this long, we need to allocate this much.
That's so one of the other pieces that's missing from that equation is the rewrites to the same cache key. So if key foo gets written once and then before it's TTL, and the TTL is fixed at either the time the key is added or potentially subsequently by an expire command. I don't know what keys use, we actually run expire commands on, but we are running some, a small number of expires to explicitly adjust TTL settings.
That's for things that don't allow the NX, or what is it?
Yeah.
The setting in
like set
that's
versus
for like
set
hashes
EX.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But
so go ahead.
We do manual expiry in those things sometimes as well. So manual expiry and rewrite.
Yes. Okay.
Unlink,
for cache invalidation, for example.
Yes.
Okay. So and the rewrite case, even without expire adjustments, is kind of an opaque thing. So I'm not sure how to account for that in terms of interpreting the values, apart from just assuming that's just allowing that to be an error factor, and
that was my question.
Low frequency. Yeah.
My question, is that safe to do? The thing is, right now, most of these cache things have a TTL of 1 week. So adjusted from the default of 2 week down to 1 week. But I was mentioning on the issue, if we allocate an instance, let's aim for a day, and after this project, when everything is using this new cache, I would start a project to lower everything, the whole TTL, to something more in the range of hours and not in days, because I think that makes more sense for this kind of cache.
Yeah, specifically for the new cache, right?
For the new cache, yes, because then we can work on a limited set. Rails.cache is huge because everything goes in there from everywhere. So this is like a slice that we're taking out, and we know that it sits in front of Gitly, and we know that, for example, Gitly is not the database, so that means it is already sharded out horizontally. And we can be more lenient in that. So
agreed.
So I suggested adding metrics. There's an issue for that, and I would love your input on what would be good metrics to determine how we provision this, how big we provision this.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That makes sense. Yes. Okay. Do you remember what time of day? I'm thinking about the snapshot that you captured. Do you remember what time of day and day of week that was?
Not by heart, but I have it
Okay.
written down.
Great. June 26th. Oh no, that was when the analysis was run on 29th.
What is the directory that I kept that stuff in?
From one of your notes says redis-maxmem-analysis/data. If
Yes.
that helps. Okay.
June 16th.
Okay.
And I was finished with it at my 6, so that's 4 UTC.
Okay.
So like noon Eastern time, so early morning West Coast, or sorry,
Yeah, not
early
peak
morning
traffic.
East.
I think about like now. So yeah.
Great. Okay. That's a yeah. My vague recollection was that we captured this during a relatively heavy time of day. We're generally, depending on, I mean, and I need what day of week was this? This was a weekday, right? June 16th.
Yes, it was a weekday.
Okay.
June 16th. It was Thursday.
Great. That's great. Yeah, I tend to shy away from Fridays because the workload's a little lighter than other weekdays. But yeah, generally weekdays starting around an hour or so ago, we tend to get like within 80% of the daily peak. So that's a great time to do the capture. Fantastic. That's
Do you suspect for any reason that if we did a capture at a different time, the results would be dramatically different?
I don't think it would be dramatically different, but we can have more since what we're aiming for is peak usage. This is pretty close anyway. So yeah, it just takes it boosts the confidence. Is all I'm really thinking.
Okay.
On that note, though, one of the again, these are super duper rough ideas. One of the ideas I had for trying to estimate how much memory we need to shed was to temporarily raise max memory for a few hours during the daily minimum, the trough in the memory cycle, and we can see exactly when that is, but we still hit saturation, just not as frequently. So if we raise max memory by, I'm making this up, by 20%, what I'm hoping for is to see a period of time when we don't reach the new max memory threshold, and thus can see where the break-even point is between insert rate and bytes per second added versus bytes per second reclaimed through expiry. Through TTL.
I am not super confident that we can reach that.
Yes, neither am I. Otherwise, we would have done it.
Like,
and to that end, my even more kind of silly sounding half-baked idea was the slope of.
Yes, that was my.
Yes. The closer we get to a slope of to a horizontal slope of 0, the closer we can infer that the closer we are for.
And in that case, you're talking about the slope between
two.
How quickly we're growing.
Correct. Yes, exactly.
I mean, we'll know if we aren't hitting max memory when we don't hit max memory, but that's not particularly helpful as far as a projection.
I don't think we'll ever not hit max memory, but if we hit it once a day, that's fine. It's just the periodicity of 10 minutes. Like, we could also, that's another thing we could measure, is the time between the drops, between when we were saturated,
between saturation events.
Every time phase 3 ends.
Yes.
The other
Yeah.
thing that's probably worthwhile to, and I saw that there's a linked issue off of one of the InfraDev issues, is to also get more metrics around hits and misses specifically. Specifically, those like misses are useful and hits are useful, and both together give us a lot of information on things in the TTL that we could be changing.
I've
Yes.
added that like to this cache. So every issue that I created, I asked add metrics for hits and misses.
Yeah.
Because if we play with things, then we know, we at least know what effect we're having to the clients.
So on yes, on that note, if we also I don't know that we can afford to do this for every for every cache key, but for cache keys that we find particularly interesting for whatever reason, like the cache key patterns that represent a large byte count, like we're focusing on, we could also try to capture the during a cache miss event. It would be fantastic to have the client code capture
how long it takes
to generate the key, exactly, and that will help us prioritize. Yeah. These keys are more valuable.
I think this is, we need to build in LabKit or something. Well, it doesn't need to be LabKit, but we need to build a thing like if you're using the cache. Yeah. Like if you're using Rails.cache, we can. No. This is a separate issue, but I think it's an excellent idea. We can use the, what is it, active support hooks things to measure all this stuff.
Okay.
And we will need to use the active support things for this new cache as well, because that's how it's implemented now. So we would basically have a new Rails.cache, but sitting next to it.
Okay.
Yeah, because overall, caching things that we're not using or that don't give us a lot is not useful in any way.
Yeah.
Conversely, there are some TTLs that we may not want to touch because they are very expensive on the back end, and maybe those need longer ones. We just don't have enough information to make those decisions at this point in time.
Exactly. And even like if this was emitted as a field on log events, that would be sufficient to do an ad hoc analysis. It's a little tempting to think about doing a Prometheus metric as well, but that can be potentially expensive. So everything, I guess I would.
This is Sidekick and the web, and I'm really careful. Like adding anything duration there is always painful.
Yes, exactly. So we'd have to do that as like a histogram. We'd have to be very careful about the scoping for it. So I guess I would lean towards as at least as a first implementation to just capture that duration as a log field, and
but then
we can do the ad hoc analysis.
Then it becomes more difficult to correct it with a key again.
Yeah.
Because we'd have we'd add the log field on an entire job or an entire request, and there's several things that could be loaded from the cache. One of them that I know about would be application settings, for example, that takes no time at all to generate. It's just used very, very often.
Yes.
And then more expensive things. But I think that's trade-off that's okay to make. We do it now to see which things are expensive for cache and which aren't. So
that's true. Yeah. Okay, well, that's more to think about. If we had a standardization method for naming these keys, if only there was like a method for normalizing key prefixes.
For the new Redis instance that we're spinning up for the registry, I've mentioned that. Like,
okay,
maybe try to adhere to something so we can keep track of where it's coming from. And
so we can keep our sanity.
Well, no, we're going to need more than that.
That seems like a really useful thing to have overall, rather than play the game of what key is related to what thing. I think Bob also mentioned at one point, like front loading some of the useful key parts of these keys.
Everything that is valuable for us, put it in.
Right, should be at the beginning, not at the end.
That's where we scan and do regex max.
Let's start with cache. That's a useful start for all of this. That's definitely
It has that.
valuable
It has
information.
GitLab because we didn't
No,
know
I'm just
that,
saying,
and then
yeah, like
cache.
cache. And it's like, cool, cache at GitLab. We knew that. I knew that, and I've only worked here for however many weeks.
To be fair, this all used to be one instance. So
Yeah, and that's the thing that happens with growth. But it seems like as we're starting to move around all of these Redises, like splitting them off, putting them in Kubernetes, doing changes, maybe it's the right time to start pushing for some of these improvements.
I think now when we spin up a new one, let's just do it better for the new one. Yeah. But that would require changing all the keys, and that's an application change. Maybe it's not worth touching.
Yeah, the transitional state's tough to work through.
Yeah, I get that.
That's another thing that I wanted to discuss with the both of you, the transitional state. I mentioned that here. Instead of doing a migration of the cache data, I suggest doing a gradual rollout by project.
Yes.
Everything that goes into this cache is related to a repository, which is indirectly related to either a group for wikis or a project or a user namespace. All of these things are actors that we can use for feature flags, so that means we can do a percentage-based rollout. So my suggestion would be to do just that. Start with selecting our projects to try it out, and then do like a quite slow but gradual rollout to,
Yes, absolutely. Where a whole projects get transitioned at once, not a percentage of requests,
yes.
not a random percentage of requests. Yeah.
What is the impact of failing back in that situation? I mean, I assume it's just that there's no cache keys that are there, and it will have to go refetch.
Yes.
So
that's pressure on Gitly.
I spent about an hour talking through the various failure modes associated with this with Igor, I think last week, and there are a lot of subtle cases that we need to address, and that's Stephanie, that's one of them that you just highlighted.
Right.
I think because we could just to kind of play that scenario out. If we having two canonical sources for ostensibly the same data, we start with A, the current cache, and switch to B. If we switch back to A, at that point we have exposed some stale cache keys, and without knowing the specific application logic, this is not a solvable problem. Without knowing the specific application logic for every one of those cache keys, we can't really infer the consequences of having switched back to a stale value, because those stale values could be read, acted upon with through arbitrary application logic, and have cascading side effects. That I've personally worked through scenarios where that damaged other data by propagating stale values in appropriate ways. I think
the scope is limited to the project. Like, it's always limited to the projects that were selected. So it's either our projects where we start or the percentage that was selected.
Yes. So going from some cache values to no cache values should typically be semantically safe. Going from
might not be performant, but it's safe.
Yes, exactly.
And back is not.
Yes.
Is there any way we could just delete the stuff in the old one?
Not easily.
I had that suspicion, because it's based on project, and that's not easy to just be like blow all that away.
The cache keys are, the cache keys start with the method name. That's a variable. The method name is the thing that we're caching. Does this repository exist? The name of the file, the whatever. And then later on, is somewhere in the cache key is the project. So if that were flipped around, we would have an easier time, but it's not, so we don't.
Right. Yep. Okay.
One thing we talked about is if we know the TTL for these cache keys, for all of the keys that we're moving to the new cache instance, we could have a rule that says that we can safely fail back after waiting the TTL duration.
This is limited. Like there's only a handful of implementations. I think it's 1 day and 1 week.
Okay.
We'll never need to wait a full day or a full week because, well, the cache doesn't live at that long. That's how fast we expire. So I think we're good if we wait like a day. But we need to look that up, obviously.
Yeah.
And
it may be reasonable, like we do with DNS changes. It may be reasonable to temporarily reduce the TTL for this trend to accommodate this transitional state to allow failback for after a shorter time span.
The problem is that we then, for this transition, we shorten the TTL for everything, not just for the projects that we're going to select.
Yes. Well, I guess I haven't looked at the client code, so I'm not sure what that looks like. So we wouldn't be able to set a. I mean, I think it might be reasonable anyway to set a shorter TTL on the.
It might be reasonable to set the TTL on the projects in the new thing, because that's when the feature flag changes. But changing it in advance for old projects will not be, because it's kind of like we can set it per project, but it's kind of like global from then on. So
right. Yeah, that makes sense.
What we could do is lower all of them,
and
the lowest value that we currently have, and if we set 1 day, I think that would be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of your data supported the 1 day pretty strongly, so I think that's probably the best option.
Yeah. And we already have the kind of soft protection of being able to gradually add projects to the set that gets migrated. So
and sacrifice ourselves first.
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
We can also disable, like explicitly exclude some projects from when we do percentage rollout. We can say never do this project.
Okay.
Or this, no, we need to say this project. I think we should do the lower to 1 day for all of these things here, because most of it's already like that. Changing the outliers, it's just going to make it safer. Then we just need to, if we decide that something is not performant enough with the cache in the beginning, then we know that this 1 day is the safe thing to do. It's still a long time, I think, though.
I agree.
I suspect that if there's going to be problems, we will notice them when we transition GitLab or GitLab, because that's on a single Gitly node that's already abused.
Yes.
So when we do that one, and that goes well, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to carry on.
Yeah, we usually learn a lot from that particular project from a performance assessment standpoint.
Okay, so that's one more issue that I need to create.
Bob, is this your last day before you go on holiday?
Yep, it is.
Okay. Have a lovely time. Hopefully this is for fun, not.
Yes, it's for fun.
Okay, great.
We're going to Poland.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome.
Is there anything else we need to discuss here?
So I guess my first question is follow-ups. Spin up a new cluster. Like, I can happily help follow up on some of these. Matt can help follow up on some of these. Are there people we need to talk to? Are there things we need to do to keep on top of things?
Yeah, so I've prefixed all of the issues in the document with where I think the work needs to happen.
Right.
Everything that is kind of like in our wheelhouse should be easy enough for for the both of you to pick up. I would definitely involve people from frameworks, Igor and so
Yep.
on, when we try to spin up a new instance.
Cool.
Everything that is marked with GitLab Rails and so on, you can tackle, but then you're going to
No, I'm good. I've learned enough this week. Thanks.
meet the review process in GitLab or GitLab, but that's
Okay.
So that kind of all depends on how much do we need to know about the data that we're going to be putting in this new cache to be able to start preparing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
What about the apart from this epic, the pressure relief that we're trying to get from the other issues, the improved efficiency of discussion caching,
Yeah,
serialized caching.
we need to collect these somewhere.
Yeah. How
do you want me to does it make sense to make an epic and link all of them from that? Is that probably the easiest way to
make
collect
an
them?
epic, and we need to make an epic on the other side, because this is an infrastructure project, and the other one lives in GitLab or GitLab, which is the GitLab org namespace, so that's different projects. I think it's a good idea to create an epic there, and link like an issue for us that we follow up on these things and the impact that they've had on.
I'm completely happy to go do some paperwork.
That would be nice of you if you could pick that up.
I will happily do some paperwork.
All the issues are linked. They're labeled.
Yeah, I saw them
with infradev, and they're linked from the investigation issue.
It's in the GitLab org space that no, what is okay?
These three issues are under GitLab org/GitLab.
Yes, so that means you'll have to create an epic in GitLab org.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then one for us to
I forget about this.
Got it.
And then an issue for us to, to track it. And we will probably
we might create that overarching epic you were talking about, Matt, because in looking into this stuff,
I think we should.
Yes, and looking into this stuff just now, I was already thinking about follow-up issues that we would need to do that aren't directly related to the new thing that we're spinning up, but that would just make running our cache a little bit nicer and finding things in it. Yeah. So
I agree. Gosh, this feels like scope creep.
Yes, so let's keep it out of the single project for the new Redis instance, but let's add it to the overarching one that we will look at after.
Do we actually have an overarching one at this point in time, or
no? We'll need to make it.
Yeah.
And that epic is called Fix Redis Cache.
Probably something like that.
Redis I'll make it sound.
Reduce.
I'm happy to create
memory pressure.
Yeah.
I'm the new person. Make me make all the issues. I'm happy to do it. So keep that in mind.
All right. Naming things is hard, but I trust you.
Naming things is hard. Cache and validation is hard. We've actually hit all the hard problems in one single issue.
All right.
Success.
Go us.
Okay. I made notes at the end of that. I'll create some epics and link all the things together.
Awesome. Rachel can let us know if she wants to make any adjustments to that. She's really good about guiding.
I can also ask her about that before I do all of this. I have a one-on-one with her later today. So.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Matt, is there something that you want to do before we start any more work to see if the work that we've defined now would be enough, or did we need to add or?
I'm on the fence about that. I want to know if it's going to be enough, but I don't know if it's worth trying to answer that question, because regardless, the work that we've planned out here is going to help. I just don't know if it's going to be enough.
It's the three biggest things. So three biggest things in my snapshot. So that means that if we're going to work on something, these should be the three things. But how much are they going to help is the question.
Plus, I mean, like two of those things you're proposing, kicking them completely out of Redis cache. That's like setting the TCL to 0 equivalently. So So I guess I wanted to ask what if anything, should we do in your absence to keep those moving, just to keep the momentum on it?
Like
Or do you feel like that's well in hand?
I think that's kind of okay because they're in the infra dev process and that has an SLO and everything, so that means it will
Yeah.
be followed up upon.
Yeah.
I already reviewed like one merge request adding metrics.
Yes.
So
Okay.
Stephanie, maybe you can find that merge request and link it from the thing that you are going to create. It's linked from one of the issues that is, I think, Igor, other Igor D created that.
Hmm.
So then we can already have a look at those metrics. I think they
Hey,
don't include sizes yet though. But yeah. Is there a counterpart that is still reviewing merge requests like while Sean and me are out that is in infrastructure? Do you know, Matt?
No. Yeah. I can't think of anything at the moment.
In my mind, these two issues of kick the thing out and use tag caching were so small, and I'm wondering like if those will just get done and we will only notice like
Yes.
when we bother to look. So
Yes.
yeah.
Just because I'm not super familiar with that framework, can you very briefly go over the ETAG mechanism? Is this what's the so this is client side storage? Do we need to worry about like an upper bound on storage size limits for the client side?
Um,
I haven't worked
I
with much with ETAGs.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. It's
Okay.
the browser takes care of that. Like if there's not enough
Yeah.
space anymore, it will evict and we'll need to re-render that.
Yes. Okay.
That's why we're feature flagging it. We do need some space in Redis shared state
Okay.
for the ETAG cache to say nothing has changed.
Got it.
Um,
Makes sense.
yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic.
Um,
I was just trying to think through potential side effects. Like we talked about, we're avoiding some work by caching these items if for whatever reason the client refuses to cache the item, then this would implicitly increase workload kind of silently from our perspective on some other parts of the system. So I wasn't sure how to assess that.
the groups that are working on these will feature
Mhm.
flag them, that I'm sure, and they should be looking at the right logs to look at the request duration. But I expect
Okay.
that request duration will be much better because most of the requests will turn into 304s instead of
Yeah.
data over the wire that
Yeah.
takes time. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, this is wonderful. This is going to be kind of, I mean, this sounds like it's going to be a performance improvement from the user's perspective, as well as our system doing this. We're moving the cache closer to the client. I mean, as close as it can be to the client. So
yeah, yeah, there's still an argument to be made for having both in some cases, though. So, but we'll
okay.
revisit that once. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. If it's a cache miss on the client side, we'd still have a cache hit on our end.
Yes, but I was looking into making the cache shared, so not caching anything that is user specific, but caching the bits that can be shared, and then.
Oh yes. Okay.
But that's a bigger project, and taking it apart, yeah, maybe it won't even be necessary if the ETAG caching is efficient enough and we see a lot of hits. So
Yeah.
I haven't
Awesome.
done anything regarding that. Okay, cool.
so it sounds like the first actual steps from the point of view of Matt and I are start working on actually making this Redis happen, right?
And follow up on the issues that have been created for the other
Right.
project that other people are working on, so we can see the results and
Right.
how far we need to go. Yeah.
But also, like, we have to figure out how to do this that Igor is greenfielding as we speak, and we're just gonna like follow along behind him and be like doing all the same things. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And figure out how to size it correctly. Like
Yeah.
I've mentioned, adding the
Yeah.
metrics. Like
Right.
discuss with each other if what I'm suggesting makes sense, and if not, wreck it and put something correct in.
Sure.
Okay.
Cool. I'll stop the recording.